Hello, everybody. Welcome to Industry Insider. It's been quite some time since we've had our last episode, but I'm happy to have here a very wonderful and special guest. Industry Insider is a podcast that provides in depth, one on one discussions about video games, game design, and a developer centric perspective of what it's like to work inside the industry. Hosted by me, Dai, a professional video game designer, engaging in casual interviews, hoping to educate and inspire developers and consumers of all skill levels. Today, we have Amario A, who is a designer on Fable, a CG Generalist at Dagger, and a renowned animator of commercials, games, and comic books. He is also a teacher at an art school, teaching kids how to bring their dreams to life. Today, we sit down to talk to him about his talents, along with his incredible schedule. So thanks for joining me on the show today. By the way, he goes by 3-Bit, so I will be referring to him as 3-Bit for the duration of the show. So thank you, 3-Bit, for hopping on. I know it's been a little hectic to get everybody together and get all the gears going, but thank you for joining the show. So hopefully you've been well.
Yeah, of course. Glad to be here. We've been trying to get this show going for some time, but I'm glad we finally got some time aside and have a good chat.
Yeah, and hopefully your schedule hasn't been too busy. I know we've been exchanging exchanging DMs for quite some time. But
Yeah.
I'm just very happy that we were able to do this. Plus, I've heard very very wonderful things about you, and I've seen you across Twitter. So I figured now would be the best time, if any,
Yeah.
to be able to
Yeah.
have a conversation. So again, welcome to the show. Thank you so much, and I hope that your workday went well. Is there anything you're looking forward to going into the holidays?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing more games. I saw there was the true achievements log of like how many hours you put in on like Xbox at least. And I haven't put in as much hours as I thought, just because of work and life and, and things like that. But I've been playing a lot of God of War this year. Played a lot of Marvel Snap. That was a thing. But yeah, looking forward to hanging with my family, Christmas movies, cookies, all the good stuff this year.
I'm glad to hear that. Is Marvel Snap is that like the new phenomena? I know nothing about it. I hear that a lot of people are enjoying it in the space, and is it something that I can play on on the go?
Yeah,
It's a mobile game, right?
it's a mobile game. I kind of compare it to the Witcher game, the card game on The Witcher.
Oh,
Like
Gwent.
Gwent, yeah.
Yes.
It's kind of like all about how much power you have on your side, and you're just trying to have more power on your side compared to the other side. It's very addicting. Like it's once I introduce people to it, they usually are like, "Huh," and then they try it, and then they're like hooked. And I usually don't play card games like that, so it really surprised me of how addicting it became.
Oh, that's awesome. And you mentioned God of War Ragnarok. I had just finished that not too long ago. I think I'm working towards the platinum trophy, but I don't know. This game feels so much more vast than the last entry. So I think I feel a little bit daunted by the entirety of it just in general.
Yeah, I have to go back and I'm sure there's a lot that I missed because I was just like it was weird. I did do a lot of side missions and stuff. Like and I do like in the game when there is a side mission, you're like, hey, you could do this or you could keep going. So it gives you that option like kind of clearly. But sometimes I'm like, I really am hooked with the story, so I just want to know what's gonna happen next. I definitely have to go back and check out
Mhm.
some of that side content, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the backtracking on it. I mean the game is just absolutely massive. I think I applaud everybody at Sony Santa Monica and then all the support studios and everything that worked on the game because it's gorgeous. Like I think it set a new standard. It set the bar very high with how well it runs, how polished it is. I think I only ran into like one or two bugs here and there, like actual game breaking bugs where I had to like reload or I got stuck in something,
Yeah.
which is kind of rare and unheard of to just in general.
Yeah,
By
I actually didn't get
yeah.
any bugs, but I don't know, I get lucky sometimes, with games like Cyberpunk, I did not get any major bugs until I would say, like, maybe I was at the very end of the game where
hmm
I think I fell through the floor, but for most of the game, I didn't get any bugs, and that was a game that a lot of people were kind of complaining about, like, "Oh, it's bug central, bug city," but I don't know. I was pretty good on that. And God of War I didn't get any either. So
Yeah,
pretty.
I'm very jealous of your experience because 2077 left a very sour taste in my mouth. I had played it for about an hour and a half, and my computer, somebody gifted it to me on Steam. My computer had struggled to keep it at 60 frames a second. I had
Yeah.
like a 2950X Threadripper with a 3090 at the time, and it was just atrocious. I played everything on like medium to low settings. I hit 60 stably inside, indoors. So yeah, I've only played it for about an hour and a half. Then I put it down, and I'm hoping that revisiting it will be good. But it's just that my motivation has dipped so low because I had such a horrible time on
Dang.
launch. I feel like revisiting it may or may not
Yeah,
be
for
in my
sure.
best interest. But if you've
I
played
I
it,
recommend it.
you recommend it?
Yeah, for sure. Just because of the story. I don't know if you're like a huge story person or what you I don't know what you prefer to play, but the story in Cyberpunk is amazing. So just for that alone, I would recommend it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a huge what's it called? I'm a huge like sci-fi fantasy nerd. Just basically anything that drives home like a very clear narrative. I'm a sucker for the details as well too. So as long even if the narrative is very plainly put up like a revenge story or like I'm missing X and Y person or my family or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm very focused in on the details. So if the game allows me to kind of play how I want and be able to talk and hang out with people and just soak in the world building, then yeah, I would definitely plan to revisit it down the street or down the
Yeah.
down
Please
the
do.
road.
Great.
Is there anything else that you've been enjoying this holiday? I've been playing a handful of games actually this last 6 months. Yeah, about the last 6 months, and
Mhm.
I've been very thankful to be able to catch up because, like you, we're very busy and we work a lot.
Yeah.
And so I'm thankful to be able to have a break to be able to get time in on Ragnarok. But let's see, I played Elden
Sweet.
Ring, and then recently I've been playing a lot of No More Heroes 3, and
Yeah.
yeah, I finished. Let's see. Like I said, I'm just a sucker for narrative based games. So I finished was it The Devil in Me, the Dark Pictures anthology. That was absolutely
Oh,
amazing
nice.
too. And
Yeah.
Sable is probably my game of the year this year, despite it coming
Ooh,
out last year.
yeah. Dang. That's a pretty good list. I'm trying to remember all the games I played. Coffee Talk. Coffee Talk actually surprised me. It's a game on Game Pass.
Hmm.
Um, and it's weird. I feel like my taste in games is like slowly changing, where I'm playing games I normally would not have played, like let's say like last year. It's weird. Like I'm just like in a very experimental uh phase, I guess, where I'm just trying out like different genres, like RPGs or text. I don't know what genre that is, where it's mostly like text to speech, and then you have
Like a
the
like a
character.
like a visual novel,
Yeah, it would be
kind
like
of.
like a visual novel type
Hmm.
game. Been playing stuff like that. But mostly, I mean, besides games, just having some downtime, I usually will put on recap movie videos, like
Okay.
just because some in my job, I'm writing a pilot for a show, so I like to put on just like quick recap videos of a whole movie. and just I don't know, it's pretty fun and interesting to see movies that I don't have time for, I guess, and just see what a movie is about. And sometimes it gives me ideas, and that's been my thing lately. I've just been putting on those recap videos. But yeah, I mean, in terms of games, always have my go-to game, right? Is
Hmm.
Halo. I always go back
Okay.
to Halo.
Yep.
I Halo always Halo means a lot to me, and not just like it's the reason why I'm an animator, actually, is
Oh
because of
wow. I have a very special game in my heart too. Metal Gear Solid 3 is that game for me.
ah nice.
But yeah, like for you, you know how you said that we're gonna reel it back a couple steps. So you know how you said that you're in kind of this experimental phase. I've been seeing that in myself as well too. And I don't know if it's just the amount of games that are coming out these last couple years. But if you reel it back like 2 or 3 years, for me, I was just huge FPS nerd. So I played Valorant, I played CS:GO,
Yep,
Halo.
that
Like
was me.
that was it. That was Call of Duty. That's all I played. It was either that or racing games, and I only played those two. It was racing sims, and FPS games. Those are the only two genres that I cared to play.
Yep.
And moving forward, I think after I got my gig at Ubisoft in 2017, moving forward, I was like, what is there? Because there's so many people in the studio that talk about new releases and stuff and what we can learn. So I kind of picked up this habit over the last couple of years, slowly but surely, picked up this habit where I just check out games to see what I can learn. Whether or not they review poorly, rate highly, whatever, I don't care what it is. I just check them out because it doesn't actually hurt to check them out, right? So the games that have really caught me this year were like Signalis and Citizen Sleeper. Like those games are like, let's see, yeah, I think both of them are like pixel based RPG. Like,
Right.
you have to read the text. There's no voice acting, and it's like, if you told me that in 2017 that I'd be playing games like this, I'd tell you that you're insane. But it's just like we go from games that are big budget AAA games, and then now I'm diving into games like Vampire Survivors or like with Marvel Snap, where it's definitely just a different change in pace, and I really really like that. So for me,
Do you think
sorry, go
we're
ahead.
getting older? Like, what is that about? Like, I promise you, like like same path. Like, I would only play competitive games like CS:GO,
Hmm.
Valorant, like a Halo, and I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older or I'm just willing to open up my brain a little bit more because with movies, I will watch anything
Oh,
too.
movies, same. I love the art house stuff. So with
Yeah.
you at work, where you watch recaps, I put on full movies. And like I put on movies that I've watched or I'm familiar with. So I'll
Yeah.
just put them on in the background while I'm doing spreadsheets or I'm working on things or working in 3ds Maya. So like I'll look over every now and then, I'll get sidetracked, and that'll be like my 20-minute coffee break, or that'll be my like little smoke break that everybody else takes. I'll just sit back and watch the movie and get lost in the movie for a little bit.
Yeah.
Um,
You'd be
so
surprised what you can learn from even bad movies. It's like I feel like when you watch good movies, you learn like, oh, like I love the way they did the cinematography. I love the way the soundtrack comes in, or how the story beats. And then you watch a bad movie, you learn like what they should have done, or
yeah, yeah. Or you learn
it's
your
like a
style. You're like, oh,
yeah,
I don't like the Dutch angle, because
yeah.
you see
You're
it
like, why?
used 20 times in this movie, but you've seen it tastefully used twice in a Denis Villeneuve movie.
Yeah,
In Dune, you're like, oh wow, that's so subtle. I didn't pick it up. Like I watched a movie recently called The Banshees of Inisherin.
yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it or you're familiar with it.
I'm familiar with it. I haven't seen it though.
Okay. Well, there's a scene in the movie where these two characters are having a talk by like a lakeside or like a riverbed, right? And it breaks the 180-degree rule, like constantly, at least twice.
Uh, yeah,
And a lot of people are complaining about it, and then upon further examination, I realized that they break the 180-degree rule only when the characters get a realization, and this character gets two sudden realizations throughout this 3-minute conversation, and that's the only time it breaks, immediately afterward. And something like that, you could tell, like you couldn't pick up unless you've watched enough movies that do that kind of stuff. Like Edge of
yeah,
Tomorrow breaks the 180-degree rule, and it's jarring, it's annoying. To me, I'm like, I don't know if Emily Blunt is in the same scene or how much time has passed, because I don't,
yeah,
it doesn't feel correctly placed. But here it feels like that rule that was meant to be broken is for a thematic purpose, and like you said, you never know. And not saying that Edge of Tomorrow is a bad movie, but you never know what you like and what you don't like until you watch something that it's poorly implemented.
yep,
And it's much like design, where when good design is good, like yeah, like it goes unnoticed, it's good, that's the point. But when designs are bad, you're like, oh my god, like this is
yeah. There's a
glaring.
lot you can learn from watching bad movies. Believe it or not, like I love watching bad movies because not only is it fun to make fun of, especially if you're with friends, it's just you can also learn like what not to do and why you don't like it, or or maybe it'll just make you laugh and put you in a good mood. It's
Yeah.
just a bunch of reasons why I'll watch like a bad movie. But everything you said about like Edge of Tomorrow is stuff I teach my students.
Hmm.
Not necessarily Edge of Tomorrow. I use Transformers usually.
Oh
Is my
man. Oh, I bet that movie has a
so
ton of
many.
great examples.
Yeah, it's just like I love watching it, but there's a lot of like Michael Bay, he has like ADD or something or OC, I don't know. He just has like the robots just going all over the screen, and they are in the top right of the screen, they're at the bottom left. He just wants the user to pay attention to what's going on, and his way of doing that is constantly just moving the robots around the screen and breaking the every single rule that's that's in there. But yeah, that's one I always use for my students to talk about screen direction
Hmm.
and the the 360 room rule and all that stuff.
Yeah. And the last thing that I will say is that when you say that maybe it is possibly that we're getting older, I think that maybe we're just getting stale on multiplayer games, because I think that's what really promoted my experimenting, was that I was like, oh, I don't have any multiplayer games to play anymore. I don't like
Yeah.
I was done playing CS, I was done playing Valorant, I was done playing, well, Halo Infinite at the time hadn't come out yet. So I was like, oh, how much more Reach can I play? You know, like how much more Tarkov can I play? Then I was like, you know what? I have a bunch of downtime. Let's play some games that I would never play, or let's play some games that are $3 on the store or that came out years ago or whatever. So and then I started diving into narrative heavy games, and then I was like, you know, this reminds me of like my favorite era, which is like the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era. So I was like, wow, it's like it ignited my love for this kind of not niche narrative, but like heavily narrative focused games in various forms. So yeah, I
So
think
it's like
maybe it is that we're getting older, or I don't know.
I just think for me, I think why I started experimenting with games is that for sure. But also I think it has something to do with like when you're playing a competitive game, and I used to play competitively in Halo. I was
Hmm.
um very competitive with Halo, entered tournaments and stuff as a kid. And over time, I guess I just want to chill, you know. I want to play things at my own pace, and I think multiplayer games sometimes can be very like intense, and you especially the way I play, I want to win, you know. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
sit up in my chair, you know. But when you're playing like a story based game, or like even the games I'm playing where it's more like a visual novel, it's like you could kind of take it at your own pace. You're um I don't know. It's just it's a different feeling, I guess, than the games I'm used to playing, which is those heavy explosion, first person competitive CS:GO, Halo type games. So maybe as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that like I want a flavor of different games, different genres.
Yeah, and I think that increasing the size of our palette is very important. It's an important lesson on just being a designer, a teacher yourself as well too,
Yep.
and a bunch of other things. And I think that it's wonderful, and it's got a lot of, what's it called? It's got a lot of benefits, and again, it's the games industry is so massive now,
Yeah.
and with different offerings, like you don't have to, what's it called? You don't even have to beat these games anymore. You play them, you're like, wow, this is a great experience, or this was kind of cool. Really wasn't for me, and then you can dip and play the next game. It's like the industry is moving so fast. Like what's it called? The Return of Obra Dinn that came out like a decade ago, like 6 or 7 years ago. Never would have
Yeah.
played it. Like if you told me that, yeah, when it came out, I remember looking at it and thinking to myself, I was like, oh, this, graphically, that game doesn't look that great. I'm not gonna try it out, right? Or things like Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, and then the pandemic happened, and then I realized that I just don't really have any options. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like I don't have any options to play those like high intensity games. Like I'm tired. So I started diving in, and next thing you know, I'm playing those games. I'm going back and playing those games, and missing everything that's happened. Journey was a transformative experience. Flower was amazing. I think that was a great. Sky is awesome. Like
Um,
Genova Chen is I applaud that person. He's absolutely amazing at everything he does.
Inside was my game of the year
Oh,
in that.
Inside was really 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 good as well too.
Yeah, Inside was amazing. I'd say like a couple games I really loved. But Halo was definitely the game that changed my
Well,
life
let's
in a lot.
let's let's talk about it. Let's talk about your
Yeah,
love for Halo because for me, Halo was just a competitive, a fun shooter that you got to play around with
yep,
friends. I went over to my friend's house and we all played Halo together. We had 4 controllers and we did 2v2s and we played online. And it was a whole lot of fun and it just was a cool little party game. But for you, obviously, it's much different. So let's talk about it.
yeah. So I guess I could start from when I first got it. So I got it on my birthday. I think I was like 8 years old.
Hmm.
When it first came out. So my dad got me. It was like a demo disc. It was like called the exhibition. Xbox used to have like these demo discs back in the day. And on the disc, it had all these different games. It had like Fusion Frenzy, had like can't remember the other older Xbox games on there, but Halo was like the very last game that I played on there, and I wasn't allowed to play M-rated games around that time. Obviously, I was like 8,
Yeah.
and I snuck played it when it was like 3 a.m. in the morning, and I was like, "Wow, this game is incredible! I don't care if I get in trouble. I have to show my dad this." And I did, and then me and him would play that demo, like, every single day for, like, months and months. We didn't even get the full game. We just was obsessed. And, once we got the game, it changed even more because, like, wow, you could this was Halo Combat Evolved for the audience. And I was like, wow, there's different levels and stuff like that. And that transformed to let's get the PC version so we could play it online. So I have two other sisters, and it's not that we weren't close, but it was like we're grown up, we're doing our own thing. And when I got the Halo the PC version, um I don't remember how exactly it happened, but I would make like servers, and then I managed to convince my sisters to join in. And so there's videos of this on YouTube somewhere, but we're all just like playing Halo together. And so I actually became super close with my sisters because of it. So that's one reason why Halo meant a lot to me. But the other reason was I wanted to um like make my own business. So what I did was I uh made like an editing team, and I learned how to video edit because of Halo, because I wanted to make montages and stuff like that. So I made a team called Blackline Media, and we did a bunch of videos for the community, and I got better and better with each video. And eventually I was like getting more ambitious with each video. I was like, first it was just doing dumb videos, like mod Halo videos, called Grunt Wars. If anyone wants to look at it, it's really bad. Um, and then eventually I was like, hey, maybe I could do a very crazy ambitious video where I actually animate Master Chief. And so I didn't know how to animate or do any 3D animation, but I learned for this video. It took me like a year to do this one video called Sketch, and Bungie featured it on their website. I was like, oh my gosh, I was freaking out. Um, then I made a sketch too. It took almost another year. And then I realized that I really loved to do videos and video edit. So my job now, which is pretty much video editing, I didn't know it would come from a video game or animation. I had no idea that would eventually be my field. So yeah, so I would make a bunch of different montages, and eventually I was like, okay, I don't want to really make videos for video games anymore. I want to do it um for my own stuff, which I eventually did. So I made a film called Crimson Tower, and submitted it to film festivals and stuff like that, and that was a journey. and I learned I loved animation eventually, but it all came from Halo. So I created this film called Crimson Tower, and then started doing animation jobs for Rick and Morty, and then um, once I worked on Rick and Morty, then I jumped on to work on Teen Titans Go for a couple episodes, and to what I do now. So it's been a journey, but that's pretty much why always love Halo, because it made me closer with my family without me realizing it. Like we would play Halo matches like every day, and then eventually leading to what my career is now as an animator. So
Yeah, I had a family game like that as well. We together as a family unit, we would play Tekken, and that would be like our game of choice. So it'd be like mom, sister, my older sister, and my younger brother, me, and my younger sister too. And then we still consistently play it to this day. So like when we're on holidays like
like
Thanksgiving, we just get together, we play Tekken, pass the controller around, and it's just like like for you Halo, it's just a very that core memory experience with your family is just it's irreplaceable. You can't substitute that with anything.
yeah, and I had no idea the impact it would have. Right? It's just um
Yeah, because
we would
it's just a video game. That's what
yeah,
that's what we've always heard. It's just a
yeah,
video game.
just a game, just a
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, so like for me, a little background for myself. Like I went to school, so I immigrated here in 2005, and they gave me some friends and my cousins and stuff, like whoever helped us out, gave me a box of NES games. And then I went to the flea market, and my dad picked up a PlayStation 1 and a PlayStation 2. And since, this is years after all these games came out, at the flea market, it just basically, I'd pick up anything for $10, $15, right? So I'm
Right.
playing all sorts of video games, and whether or not I understood them or not that's a completely different animal in on itself, right? So I'm still learning English, going to ESL classes and stuff like that in school. And here comes a game where I'm playing as a spy, Metal Gear Solid 3,
Yeah,
and you don't kill anybody, or you're not supposed to kill anybody. And now you have to dig out your own wounds, and you have to patch yourself up, and I don't think that's what got me. What got me was the minute details and how fun and engaging Kojima made like his little Easter eggs and like his little things. Like if you go to the character viewer and spin the character viewer around, you can make Snake throw up. And for me,
yeah,
that's what it's like. A video game reached out and said, "We acknowledge that you have player agency." And at the time, I'm like 10 years old, right? I don't know what that even means. But 10-year-old me, it's like an epiphany happened. I was like, man, games are so much more than just games. And Metal Gear Solid 3 also has like 12 hours of cutscenes as well too. So that was
yeah,
also like a movie. So it was like a little bit of game, a little bit of movie, a little bit of game, a little bit of movie. And so that really kind of ironed home both my love for video games and movies at a young age, at a young start. And of course, we all played fighting games and stuff together as a family. So to me, yeah, like your Halo experience is something that I also deeply resonate with. And it's just, these games are just games. Then I ended up going to school for something that I'm currently, I mean, I still use the skills. I'm not using the degree, right? I went to
right.
school for theoretical physics with a minor in philosophy at UC Berkeley.
Yeah,
A small little indie school, you may have heard of it. So yeah, I went to school there, and then I just, it was fun. It was fine and dandy, and it was really, really expensive. And then I realized that I just didn't want to, I just wanted to make games. Like Kojima was announcing his retirement at the time because this whole Konami situation, right? Like
oh yeah,
about a decade ago. And I just thought to myself, oh, I was in shambles. I was like, oh my God, Kojima's quitting, So I was like, why don't I just make the games that I want to play? And that's what jump started that.
oh, so that was like your moment, like where
Yeah,
you
that was my
realized.
moment. I was like, this is now
Nice.
or never. Like what, I did all the research, right? So like I was at least a little bit prepared. So I was like, how much is Unreal Engine? Oh, it's $20 a month. Oh, it's free now. Oh, sick. Oh, how much do I have to pay for licenses? Oh, no, Unreal Engine 3 is, you got a commercial license. Unreal Engine 4, you get 5% or whatever. Oh, sick. This is great. How much tutorials are there on YouTube? Oh my God, there's a butt ton. and then they announced assets. Hey, $10 million assets are free now. What? Oh man, I gotta jump on this before I miss my chance. So I felt like that was the calling, and then
Yeah.
so I took the money that UC Berkeley reimbursed to me, and I ran home. I took it. I flew home, and I built a computer at the time, which I still currently have. It was a quad core i7 6700K with a
Oh,
970. Well, actually, it was a 750 that I upgraded to a 970. Um, and that was my first machine. But before then, I was like starting doing research and running these 3D programs um, on a laptop, like a little gaming laptop. It was like a little HP gaming
yeah,
laptop, and it
yeah.
had like an NVIDIA MX 240 on it. And in school, I had like a big professional like DGX tower that's because I took like Photoshop in school. And I thought to myself, like, I love Photoshop and it's fun, but it's just a hobby. I feel like there's something more. But that computer, when I opened up Maya in 3DS, I thought to myself, yeah, this is sick. This is cool. Like, this is the kind of power I need.
Right.
These are the kind of tools that I like to work with. So upon doing more research and realizing how hand in hand they are in the games industry, I just decided to take my jump and to go into the games industry. So for reference, I'm only 25, right? I was born in 97. I'm only 25. So, this
That's
was
awesome.
like 7, 8 years ago. So I was like 17, 18 when I made the jump. I was like, this is the move. So,
That's sweet. I always like hearing about people's like snap moments of when they realized when they I don't know when what their career is eventually going to be. Because I remember feeling a little bit lost. Like I knew I loved art, or
mhm,
I just didn't know what genre of art. Even today, I still love a lot of. I love doing comics. I love directing. That's something I realized I love directing for animation.
yeah,
And my snap moment was really I was just I was invited to be in a classroom full of animators, and they were presenting their short films, and then I realized, like, what, you can make your own film, like you could just draw and make that. I don't know. It was like a weird moment. I was like, wow, that's actually kind of cool. That was my click moment, but I guess prior to that, it was definitely Halo. I just didn't realize it at the time because I'm in an artistic family, so
mhm,
I didn't wanna do what my parents or what my dad did just just to be different. Like, I didn't wanna do what he did because, like, I'm gonna be different, you know? But, um, for those who don't know, my dad, he was a comic book artist for Marvel. He was a cleanup artist for Thor, Hulk, and, some other stuff. And, so growing up, he would always show me the comics he worked on, and, for a while, I would just be like, that's fine, whatever." For some reason, one day it clicked with me how cool that was. I don't know what it was. It was just like randomly, like, huh, you can make your own characters and you could draw, and I don't know. For one day, it just clicked with me how cool that was. And so I have two other sisters. One is in fashion, and my um other older sister, um, she does like really awesome murals around the city and stuff like that. But, eventually I learned animation. Animation's awesome. So,
that's a
that's
that's a
pretty much
s- a sick amount of creative genes inside the family. My family is totally the opposite. My
yeah.
dad was a diplomat. My mom was a farmer. She didn't go to school.
Right, right.
But my uncles and aunts were like lawyers and businessmen, and they were architects and
But that
doctors.
means when they see your work, they're like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." But when I show my work to my dad, he's like, "Hmm, the legs are a little bit off." Like, he knows.
Yeah, so I had went back home not too long ago to Vietnam to introduce to everybody, like, hey, this is what I'm doing nowadays, and now I'm older because I hadn't been home in quite some time, like about the
Yeah.
10 12 years or whatever. So I came home and I'm growing up now, and everybody's like, hey, how are you doing, Di? And I was like, well, I'm doing well. And they're like, what are you up to now? And I'm trying to explain to them, because at the time Ubisoft hadn't opened their Vietnam office yet. So like
Alright.
video games is like a very new vocation in the East, right? Like Japan, it's like, video game designer, like, not really a thing, right? In China, it's like, okay, sure, it's kind of on the up and up. Vietnam, it's non-existent. Because video game consoles aren't really even sold over there. Um, what's it called? Sorry, one second. I lost my train of thought for half a second. Um, yeah, so like video game consoles aren't really like a thing over there. So like it's still like a booming market, booming interest kind of deal, right? And so when I went back home and I was like, "Hey guys, I make video games," they're like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, I make video games. Like I'm a designer. Like I'm a what do I work in a team. Like I gotta make video games." And they're like, "What's a video game?" And I was like, oh, League of Legends is really big over here.
Yeah,
I basically make League of Legends." And they're like, "Oh, that's so cool. That's pretty awesome. All the young kids love that."
yeah,
Because of the Vietnam War, there's a huge generational gap. So all my aunts and uncles are like 65, 70, and
yeah,
I'm like 20, you know? And all of my cousins are like 20 to 30. So there's like a 40-year gap, 30 to 40-year gap between like the kids and the adults. So the kids are like, "Oh my god, you're a streamer, you're a game designer. Yeah, do you know this, and do you play League?" And all the adults are like, "What? What what are you
it's
talking
really
about?"
weird.
Like,
When I teach, sometimes I go into schools and then like I'll have kids come up to me like, "What, you know Fortnite?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not that old." Like, what do you mean? But yeah, that's interesting. So you and your family, like, they didn't really know what like video games kind of was, like they kind of got it, I guess.
no, my mom always thought it was a waste of time. She went ballistic when I left my PhD program.
Oh,
As you can imagine, being a
yeah,
minority, I was like, "Yeah, mom, I'm quitting school." She's like, "What?" I was like, I'm leaving this
yeah.
top school to come home and bum off your house and
And make games.
make games, I guess." And she's like, "What?" And I was like, "I'm creating things with my hands, and I'm gonna sell it, or sell the property, or sell something. I'm gonna make some money, okay? I'm gonna make some money." And so she was like, "Whatever you want, buddy." So she
Yeah.
was like very disappointed in 2015, 2016, but I ended up flying across the country again, back to San Diego, and I ended up meeting at a convention. It was like E3. I met at a convention the guys at CI Interactive, the guys that make Sniper Ghost Warrior,
Yeah.
and I was playtesting the alpha of Ghost Warrior 3. And I was sifting through the menus and I was looking at animations. I was just seeing things if they clip through stuff. And I was just kind of really trying to soak in everything because at the time I didn't really know what level design was. Like I didn't know there was like a term for it because, I'm like 17, 18. I'm still lightly doing research, doing indie game stuff
Yeah.
and still learning. So I'm just like messing around. And then I thought to myself, I was like, well, let's just soak in the environments and, like the actual visuals of what I see and what I can deduce, right? I use my analytical skills from college, philosophy and physics, and then my love of film as well too. So I kind of just pieced it together slowly, and I was messing around, and they noticed that I wasn't playing. The lead level designer noticed that I wasn't playing the game, and so he walked over and he said, "Hey, bud, what are you doing? What are you interested in? Can I help you out with anything?" I was like, "Yeah, I just want to know if like the menu buttons are persistent. I want to know like if I can climb this rock." And he was like, what are you interested in? I was like, I want to make video games. Do you have any tips? And he gave me this like giant boulder of gold. And he was like, "Look, I have a political science degree, dude. I don't know how to make games when I started. Here I am as a lead now. I would just say, just make things with your hands and
Yeah.
make sure that you can get in with a portfolio and make sure that like it's not about school, it's about what you can actually make, right? Because we're as an industry and just because it's a huge intersection of like art and math and science and other STEM majors, it's like what you can prove and what you can do is more important than what you learn. Because going to school is great, but it doesn't necessarily gear you for the pipeline of actually working in an environment. And I was
Right.
like, oh, okay, that I've got it all wrong because I've just been studying, I've been learning, and
Yeah, ours is the one industry where it's like they are really looking for, I guess, your work, and who have you worked with in the past? Have you done any work we could see? Like, what's your portfolio look like? Um, or are you willing to learn essentially if you don't have any crazy experience? So yeah, it's an interesting industry because I guess I don't know if all industries are like this, but with games specifically, they are just mostly looking at your work as opposed to your degree and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. It's again, it's the experience, I guess, right? The
Yeah,
tangibles. And so yeah, he gave me that boulder of knowledge, and he was like, "Yeah, man, this is it. Go for it." I apply to Blizzard all the time, and I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." Well, then I wrote down a bunch of notes, and I asked him a butt ton more questions. And he was like, "Hey, your time's running up, but if you want to come back to the booth, you're more than welcome to later after like we close up, and I'll answer all your questions." So I was like, "Oh, dude, you're the effing best, right?"
yeah,
And so I came back and asked a bunch of questions, and I like filmed it, and I made sure like I studied all that information and ingrained it into my brain. And then, yeah, lo and behold, I end up at Ubisoft just a year and a half later.
yeah.
From October 2016 to November, yeah, just a 1 year later, I'm at Ubisoft working on Watch Dogs Legion, which is a game, ironically enough, I bought 7 years, 3 or 4 years prior. That
Yeah.
was like one of the first games I bought for the PlayStation 4 was Watch Dogs, and here I am
Incredible.
working on the latest entry, and I just thought to myself, I was like, this is unreal. Like, this is an unreal experience. Like, I'm really here doing this. So yeah, and then asking a bunch of questions in the workplace, and then yeah, I just ended up like falling into level design because I wanted to kind of impact the player agency, which is something that was very important that Kojima had back in the day that I just thought of, but I couldn't really necessarily put my mind to or necessarily like define. So I was like, wow, this is great. So all the pieces kind of fell into place, and that's how I ended up where I'm at now. And so yeah, so
Not a
that's
lot of
my
people can
background.
put, I guess, so basically you realizing what your passion is and changing course direction, right? Of you
Hmm.
kind of like basically just like, okay, mom, this is this is what I'm gonna do now, and then actually studying it to taking notes. It just shows that you were passionate, about what you wanted to do and follow through. I guess a lot of people can get lost in that step where they're like, oh man, I really want to do games. I'm not really sure how to do it. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is just the best way to learn to either doing animation or even video games. It sounds like simple, but it's just like just doing it, watching a tutorial, figuring it out, talking to uh like what you were doing, like talking to a dev and seeing like, hey, um how would I get into applying to a different studio? Like, what advice can you give me? I think a lot of people get lost in that step where they just get like, oh, I can't do it, it's impossible. Or but honestly, making that first step where you realize what your passion is and actually just like, let me just make something really quick. Let me watch a tutorial of like Unreal, see how to create a level, like a quick level. Like, oh, that part was easy, that part's hard. Let me talk to somebody who's in the industry, and see what it's like. See if you're actually passionate about it. But yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, putting the plan into action, because it's always like you can always get stuck in the studying phase, right? Because you're like, oh,
Yeah,
I'm not experienced enough. I need more. But actually going out and doing the nitty gritty stuff is to me and to us in the industry what's most important. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, I again, thanks for talking to me about that. We're gonna take a little detour, and you spoke about teaching and your passions there, and how like basically school or being a teacher has influenced you,
yeah.
especially in games, movies, and your own personal work. Um, how is that, by the way? How is teaching? Is it something that you also are very passionate about? Because as a
Yeah.
teacher, you have to have a certain amount of knowledge, and you also have to have the skill and an ability, talent even, to be able to, well, to describe that and to be able to instill that knowledge. Because I find it that, especially in our industry, I'm sure you've spoken to tons of people like this. that
Yeah.
our seniors aren't necessarily the best teachers. Some of them are great, some of them are renowned and fantastic, but some of them are just, they know the knowledge, but actually passing that
Don't know how to
knowledge on
describe
is the hard part. So how do you harness that ability as a teacher, or how do you overcome any roadblocks that may be present when you're teaching your knowledge?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for one, a lot of artists in general are introverts, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think a lot of artists create worlds inside of their head, and then when you ask them, like, "Hey, what you working on?" They're like, nothing." But inside their head, they have all these stories, and I feel like a lot of kids are like that. A lot of kids are brilliant and smart, but they're constantly um, put in a shovel where they're like, "Oh, you're just a kid, you can't do anything." And so the way I like to teach is to kind of be on their level, like the conversation we're having, and believing that they can do anything. And I I guess I realized my passion for teaching kind of coincides was with directing. But yeah, I love teaching. I love, so I teach at my family's art school, Mario's Art Academy, and we teach kids. Well, I think thousands of kids by now.
Hmm.
How to create comic books, storytelling, basically everything I learned in the industry. I try not to hold back. I just teach it to the kids, and pass it on, whatever I learn. And it I think the challenging part can be you can only really teach someone who wants to be taught. So
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes I go into places where like a lower income area, and sometimes they're in an environment where there be kids who do who are getting bullied, and they're like, you're learning how to draw or whatever. Those are always the harder areas to and it does frustrate me to see that, because they want to learn, but they're just in an environment that they can't learn. So I think the best thing about the art school is that we can give these kids the ability to learn things in the industry, but for way way cheaper, right?
Hmm.
And learning it before you get to college, before you get into these places where you're gonna learn the hard way. So I basically try to make it so they don't have to learn the hard way, and relate to them on that level. And yeah, I've been teaching probably since I was like 16 or so, and because it's a family business, and I was kind of thrust into it. I didn't know I wanted to be a teacher. um I guess I was just put into situations where I'm like, oh shoot, I have to talk in front of like 100 people. And I remember my dad kind of forced me into it. So what happened was we were at City Hall, and I think this I might have to look this up to see if it's recorded, but we were at Georgia City Hall, and I had to speak in front of the governor and give him like an art lesson.
Oh,
And
that must have been nerve wracking.
yeah, yeah, because I've never taught before. And my dad's like, okay, go. And Paul Jenkins was there. He's a good friend of mine. He's uh, the creator of Civil War, and he's an amazing friend of mine. And he was there. He was wearing a mocap suit, and because they were trying to bring more films to Georgia
Oh yeah.
um, before the tax. So that was around the time where films were about to be filmed in Georgia. So my dad was like, "Yep, you're gonna talk in front of all these people. Good luck." And he was doing that to teach me. At the time, I didn't appreciate it. I was like, "Oh, what the heck? I have to talk in front of these people." But eventually, it did teach me to I guess gain the confidence to teach like 100 kids. And um, it's all about just like basically being yourself, making sure that you're clear, concise, but at the same time breaking things down where it's easy enough to understand. Because like you were saying, there's senior level positions. I know so many smart senior developers who are don't want to really explain to you. They're just like, I'm in my own bubble. I'm gonna stay in my bubble.
Yeah, I had learned something not too long ago. This is actually brilliant. Like just a
Yeah.
couple years ago, it was like, or actually last year or something like that. A senior was like, "Oh yeah, if you just want to randomize your project, just use the physics based whatever." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, bro, just drop it in the air and then just press K and then you're good. And then just bake it into the bake it into like the floor displacement." And I was like,
Yeah.
"I don't know what I can't. I'm sorry, what?" And he was like, "Bro, just get in there and just press, like, drop the items in the air and then just press K." And I was like, "Okay." So I pressed it. And then what he was trying to teach me was that it basically played the level and then it used the physics engine and it dropped everything onto the floor. And then
Yeah.
once it settled, you can press space and then you can bake
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, you could bake the objects into the environment, into like the floor displacement texture. But he wasn't telling me that. He was just like, he was what's it called? He was telling me his actual thoughts, which is like obviously his process. Like, oh, you just do
Yeah.
this, which is fine because he's a senior level and he's done it like this for at least 2 or 3 years now. But I this is totally new to me. So yeah, like with you said, like so many talented seniors that have taught me so many great things, so many shortcuts and so many fantastic, amazing stuff, but have explained it to me so horribly that it's very hard to get a grasp on this
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
That's probably the biggest thing that people are gonna face when they do jump into the gaming industry or animation industry. So I'm very much in both. So the first time I worked on Rick and Morty, first off, the writers and the environment of that show, working on that show, was incredible. Like everyone's just having a good time, and you could tell like what when you watch Rick and Morty and then you can tell how ridiculous that show is. It's just imagine the environment of like the animators, and you're probably right. It's just like it's within the DNA of the creators as well. But there was the episode I worked on was it was the summer keep summer safe. So I had to animate the spaceship. I don't know if anyone has watched this episode, but basically I had to figure out the spaceship and how to animate it correctly. But they had like their own rig. It was a mixture of 3D and 2D. So figuring out like how everything worked, and I had so many questions, and then like people just kind of like, you got it, you're I seen your work, you could do it. I'm just like, I had no idea. Just like I would just say, whoever listens to this later, please pass along information. It just saves heartaches and time in the future if you just have a little tip.
Yeah, because it is scary to ask questions sometimes, especially when you're the new kid in the
Or
office,
trying to
right?
prove yourself, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like people like you said, "Well, we've seen your work. We know what you can do. You got hired here, so you're good enough." Like, yeah, but also you have to understand that this is a different environment than what I'm used to working at, or like, oh, I
Yeah.
came from school and now I'm working in a 9 to 5 office where I don't have to wear a suit or whatever. Because when I went to Berkeley, it was like there was the dress code for every class. So like if a class was business casual, you couldn't show up in jeans. You know what I mean? Or if a class was business professional, you had to show up like that, or else the professor wouldn't let you in, or professor would tell you to go home, and you'd have to miss class that day, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not dressed, and they're trying to, well, this whole Silicon Valley, California thing, they're trying to instill the idea that like you need to abide by rules of the workplace, right? But
Right.
then you go work in a game studio, or you go work in like a corporate
They wear like
environment.
onesies.
Yeah, they're in their onesies, and they're like,
Mhm.
I saw a dude sleeping in the break room. I was like, "Yo, you good?" And Warren was like, "Yeah, I have my alarm set for like 2:15, so like in 15 minutes I'll get up." It's like a little micro nap. I'm like, this isn't the college experience. This isn't the prep that I was being taught. So here
Yeah.
I am watching people sleep under their desks, or like play video games at their desk, or like be on break, or like watching movies on the side like I do. And it's just like it's a totally different environment, and everybody's so friendly and so nice and helpful. And it's like, asking questions suddenly becomes a conversation like this, or asking a question suddenly becomes a, hey, Amario or 3-bit, do you want to hang out and bowl after, after work or whatever? Because I'd love to continue this conversation. And it's so dynamic, the workplace. And I'm sure working on Rick and Morty was like this as well too. It was like you met so many
Yep.
talented people that had their own spin on things, had their own take. Like it varied so much from person to person. It's like, oh man, I just never wanted to stop learning. You know what I mean? Because like
Yes.
the level design team that I
Crazy.
worked with at Ubisoft was like 12 people or something like that, and
Yeah.
everybody was different. So one person was like, you got to have the 3 C's, you know what I mean? Yeah, combat, camera, and character. And the other one was like, oh man, just abide by the metrics. I'm like, what? And they're like, it's 1 meter, 2 meter, 3 meter, climbables and non-climbables, all of the, what's it called? He said, make all of the cover in the game perpendicular to the character,
Yeah.
and walls, and then make them 0.5 meter high. So when your character crouches, it covers their entire body so nothing clips through. And I was like, yeah, but doesn't that make the game like really stale and ugly? He was like, yeah, but that works. And I'm just like, there's a lot of different varying philosophies when it comes to working in a game studio.
It's a
So
lot
yeah.
of things you don't realize, like I guess from playing games and then jumping in the gaming industry, just like little things like that that I guess I would have never even thought of prior to working on
Hmm.
games or even animating. Like right now, I am the sole animator for the Affleck Duck. Right?
Yeah, which I
Um,
think is very impressive. By the way, I was bragging about it earlier.
yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna interview 3-bit, and he does the Aflac commercials, and that's freaking cool, you know.
I had no idea like the passion that goes behind that team and like I had no idea. Like I would watch those commercials, but I didn't know like that there's a whole team, behind it trying
Hmm.
to make those commercials dynamic and really send out a message and get engagement and how to render his dang feathers. His feathers are they're
Is
annoying.
it more? More that it lets on? Because the commercials are only what, like 30, 40 seconds or something like that, a minute.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
when you see the commercials, you're like, it's just a duck, But like, I'm sure it's more than it lets on.
Yeah, because it's a mixture. So we have the social content of like Affleck commercials where you'll only see that on TikTok or like a Instagram or like Twitter and stuff like that. So that's one aspect, and then we have our what they call TVC, which are the like what you'll see after a football game, like those commercials, whether it's a little bit higher budget, like 1 million or 2 million per commercial. And then you have like the random content where you might see an Affleck commercial at a movie theater, or you're just in line to get popcorn. I don't know what those are called, but I do those too. Whatever those are called. And yeah, it could be a lot of work because there's sometimes there's rights issues
Hmm.
where you have a puppet and then the people who do the puppet for the Affleck duck are um they're the same people who do the puppet for Baby Yoda in Star Wars.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, same
That's
people.
I'm gonna tuck that into my
Yeah,
trivia.
fun little fact. So it's a super talented like puppetry team, but we have to always figure out like when to use the puppet, when to use the CG duck. It's like, okay, is he doing like a complicated action that might be better for the CG? That's where I'll come in. And then on my side, I have to make sure, I set up the Maya scene correctly. His
Hmm.
his hair is so weird and finicky. So trying to figure out the first system and making sure that the XGen files work correctly and yeah, it's a whole process. But yeah, I'm glad we have this show to geek out about gaming stuff.
I mean, I love it, and so
Yeah,
yeah. But back to games.
yeah,
You had told me prior to the show starting that you are now a designer on Fable. I'm assuming at Playground Games, correct?
yep.
Okay,
Playground.
awesome. Is that a role that you just fell into, or is that a role that like they were hiring? You were like, why not? Was it like a role that was not
Yeah,
given to you, introduced to you?
it was a role that was kind of introduced to me after doing some work at Meta. So I at Meta I do a lot of different commercials and contract work, and we are releasing a book called Fairy Quest, and a couple other things for Marvel that we were doing, and somehow my name got thrown in the pot by by Paul, and one of the directors over at Playground. He was talking with him and recommended me for the job as a designer over at Fable, and that was insane. I had no idea. It was kind of introduced to me, so it wasn't like a traditional process. So I don't know what the traditional process for is
Yeah.
to get into something like that. I know at UB it was they had to do a test, right?
Yeah, a
HR,
technical test and HR
yeah,
test. Yeah.
technical test, and that was more traditional route. But Playground was kind of very lucky, I guess, that they saw my work. They recommended me, and doing some work for them for a while, and wow, the team is super talented. The the organization is insane. I love their pipeline
Hmm.
over at Playground.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you find it differing from Ubisoft quite a bit, or did you find it to be the same kind of structure?
I would say it's pretty different.
Hmm.
Maybe it's just the people.
Okay.
I guess because I think over at UB, because I worked with so many people, um, I felt like wasn't close with a lot of people, and
Yeah. Yeah.
then at Playground, I'm working with like the same team,
Hmm.
like the same four people, and we're constantly just going through um the development process, so like over and over, and like, hey, we need to fix this. Hey, we're just in meetings over and over. That like if they text me, it's normal, you know,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
like outside of work. So I I I I guess that's where it's different. UB was like such a big team. Um, that yeah, it's pretty different.
Yeah. At UB, I felt like I was being pulled in a lot of directions at once because
Yeah,
it was always like talking to that cross mingling between teams is extremely valuable, but it's also kind of taxing at the same time because you touched upon it earlier where you say that artists are introverted, right? Like I feel
yeah,
like every single time I work, I always describe this as like game developers are really just introverts that have to put on their extrovert skin because there's so much necessary mingling that needs to happen, right? Like
yeah.
one little tiny change can affect 20 people down the line. So now you have to go talk to everybody, or you get an email that says, "Hey, we have to do this meeting on Friday. We have to do the whiteboard talk," and so you go in and you're like, "All right, what's going on?" So now you have two to six different disciplines that you're sitting right next to or right behind, and you're like, I didn't realize that what I did affects everybody else in the pipeline. So it's just a lot of people, like
It's a
12,
collaborative
24. Yeah.
medium. It's really weird. Like you'd be surprised. I guess people who don't really go into game development, you'd be surprised the amount of positions that all are sort of interconnected with each other, and they all um that's why I give props to like directors who have to basically handle teams, like large teams, because trying to get everyone on the same page and just um make sure the project managers are contacting um like QA testing, and all these different positions are all in sync is it's important. It's important to game development. Like game development is a very collaborative thing. So when you're talking about um uh I guess artists being introverted,
Hmm.
it's like you kind of have to be communicative. You have to be pretty communicative with if you have a problem, like let's say you're running into an issue and something is not possible, you have to you have to say it, because maybe it'll affect something else down the line. And I'm very stubborn, where I try to fix things all on my own. um
You and I both. I'm a solution driven man. So as soon
yeah,
as there's a problem, I'll be, oh, this is easy.
yep.
Yeah. So
I'm just like, I'm gonna solve this all on my own. But sometimes someone might have an answer like, oh, literally just do this, and you're like, dang, I wish I knew that.
or I
You
wish I
never.
asked. I find that to be often my case where I'm like, I got it. and then I'm coming up with all these solutions or all these possible situations, and then somebody walks by and was like, "Dude, just press the button." I'm like, I didn't think about that. I didn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Those moments are always hilarious to me because it's happened to me more often than I like to admit, but that's just because my personality is just I want to prove to someone, no matter how long I am at a job, I'm
Hmm.
like, I want to prove I can do this. And you start to have that mentality, like what is it, imposter
Imposter
syndrome.
syndrome, yeah.
Yeah, you start to have imposter syndrome even if you've been there, you've already launched products for the team already. I don't know, for me it sometimes creeps in randomly, like, oh, I have to prove that I can do this. Like, wait, I already proved it like 5 other projects, but still I have to I have to prove it again. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a I think it's a constant struggle because because the amount of people that we work with, right?
Yep.
And how much talent that they hold, it's like I feel like I can never compare. Cuz I mean, I some of the seniors that I talk to are like, I'm like, "Yeah, my first game is Halo." They're like, "I built that game." I'm like, "What?" You know?
Like,
They're like, cuz I have one person that I'm a huge fan of. His name is Deinhart. He was a narrative designer on Fear 2, and he did
oh,
Fear 3. He did the original script and pitch for Horizon Zero Dawn.
love
And
it.
he's done like a bajillion games, and then he started up. He helped co-create Nintendo World, Super Nintendo World over in Japan,
Yep.
and put up the park. And then he did a bunch of other things as well too, and he did Prey, like the original with the Native Americans. Um, and speaking of him, and I kind of see him as like my mentor. And speaking of him, and then he just recently launched like a D&D style, like a board game and pen and paper style. And speaking of him, he was like, "Yeah, I'm the original narrative designer." Like, but when I started, like that wasn't a term, so I coined it. And I was like, "Huh?" And then here, he's talking to me, and I'm like, yeah, I really like Fear. Fear is great. I own all three of them." And he was like, "Yeah, I wrote those." And I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, you know what I mean? Like, you like single handedly wrote my childhood, And he was like,
Yeah, I had that moment
"Yeah."
too. Those are always interesting moments when you're in the industry. Like, oh yeah, that's my favorite game is like Halo. You're like, oh yeah, I made Halo. Those moments are crazy. I had that moment with my mentor being Paul Jenkins, and he has written out so much. But I was talking about Darkness with him one time,
Oh, the game?
uh, the first game, yeah, and
Oh
he
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
"Oh yeah, I wrote it." I was like, "What?"
What?
He was, yeah, he was the person who wrote the first Darkness, because I was, and he was funny because he was smiling at me when I was like explaining it. I was like, "Oh, I really like the first Darkness. It had this moment where you're kind of like on the couch and you're just watching TV, and that was one of a good moment in gaming for me." And he was like, "Oh yeah, I remember when I did that." And he was talking about him writing it, and yeah, I was like, this is insane.
Yeah, I had that moment with Steven Deinhard the fourth as well too. I was like, yeah, Fear 2 is amazing. Like the way they incorporated jump scares into the game, and like and the visuals, it pulled me straight into like this early 2000s like Japanese horror, which is something I'm a huge fan of. And it's like
Yeah.
visually it's so stark and appealing, and like when they drain all the colors, it's like it's so there's this motive and there's this thematics. And he was like, "I know. I was there." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "I wrote that game." And I was like, "Oh my god." And he was like, "Yeah, I wrote it and I designed that stuff. That those notes that you were talking about, I passed those notes to my team." And I was like, "What? You mean like the whole game?" And he was like, "Yeah, actually you were wrong right there. Like this is what I wanted to convey." And I was like, "Oh my god." I was like, this game I remember playing like so much when I got my PlayStation 3. And he was like, "Oh, well, yeah, by the way, the PlayStation 3 version is a port of the PC version, and that was
Yeah.
done by this studio, so I didn't really have like this this minute change here where they moved this filing cabinet to the left. I didn't have control over." I was like, "Am I speaking with somebody who like basically moved me in the direction that I needed to be moved?" It's
Yeah.
insane. And I have
I
so
love
many of
those.
those moments. Yeah. I love those moments.
Some of my favorite moments are those, like, where, I don't know, you realize that some of the movies you watch, the games you play are there's people behind it, right? There's a
Hmm.
lot of people who are super passionate about the things that they're creating, and they're super talented too. So it makes you like, oh dang, um, one day we'll both be will be the Kojimas, hopefully, in the world.
Yeah, hopefully you'll probably be a household name much faster than I will be. I
Eh,
still have a lot to learn before I get into the director role. But yeah, it's like there's so much that I'm trying to accomplish, and eventually one of these days I will get around to doing all of them.
yeah,
But I would love to, if anything, and this question goes out to you as well too, to make your mark in the world. The ultimate goal for me anyway is to kind of um supersede whoever it is in the horror genre at the current moment right now. I know that wow, the time that I needed it, I forgot his name. The father of Shinji Mikami, the father of horror games. I want to
mm,
supersede him and become the next auteur
eh,
that is inside the horror genre, because I just really genuinely love those works,
yeah.
despite like being too scared to
More
play
horror
horror
games.
games. But
I
it's
love.
like it's the kind of, what's it called? There's a level of talent and skill that needs to be used, for me anyways personally, in a horror video game versus like a traditional FPS, because there's so much that needs to be put into a game, and I feel like that intersection is much more important for media wise, for game, music, and narrative in a horror
Yeah,
game than say something like GTA or our game, Watch Dogs Legion, where the shootout doesn't necessarily need music to make it fun and engaging and cool for the player, right? But if you
right.
remove music from a horror game, that's potentially a different experience. So to
Yeah.
me, I
Audio
would,
is it's big. It's
yeah,
big in
I
horror
wanted
games.
to really, really focus on that. So to me, my ultimate goal is to become like the godfather of horror. For you, hopefully, you
Yeah,
can,
I want to
yeah.
direct for animated films or shows.
Hmm.
Uh, that's my end goal, but I mean I love video games as well. So if it leads to me eventually directing video games, hey, I'm I'm down.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I hope that, tracking both of our progress, I hope that we can both become directors of,
Yep.
of our
Let's
respective properties at the
meet
same
back here
time.
in 5 years.
Yeah, let's meet back and let's have this conversation again, and see what we learned, and see what, and hopefully I will be asking you this time for tips on directing my next gig or whatever it may be. So yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's put the plan into action. But yeah, I don't have much more questions for you. It's been an absolutely brilliant talk. It's been amazing to get to know you and talk to you.
Yeah, time
The
flew by. Crazy.
Yeah, I know, right? It's been, what would have been an hour and 15 minutes now. It'll be closing in an hour and a half here shortly, in a blink of an eye. So I just wanted to ask you probably one or two more key questions there at the end. Um,
Yep.
what surprised you most when you first started in the industry? Just any industry, games or animation. Was there something that you like your first day at the office or something like that was something that really took you by surprise?
It's a good question. I guess for some reason, before I was in the industry, I'm like, they have to be using some crazy tools that we don't have. And it's impossible. Like, I can't afford it. And I don't know. I had that thought in my head. And then
Hmm.
when I started doing commercials, I'm like, oh, they're using Maya? Oh, they're using After Effects? Like, I use that. I think that was one thing for some reason I was thinking. I mean, not to say that um like these companies don't have special tools, like game studios definitely do. I've seen it, but I'm just talking about like I guess with commercials specifically, thinking that everything was unique or special. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking.
Well, they
um
they always seem so intangible to us, right?
yeah,
Because like
that's
looking in from the outside, because you always see like yeah, we made this commercial in house, and you always hear that, but you don't actually
yeah,
know what that means. Same thing with in the games industry. Like people always ask me, a hot question that they always ask is like, which engine do you use? I'm like, it's just some proprietary engine we slapped the name on. Like I don't know. It's not like a public knowledge kind of thing. I was like, yeah, we just use the Disrupt engine. Like it's not, I don't know, it just is an engine. But yeah, looking on the outside, you're like, what? Oh my God, what do they use? What are their tools? And then when you're on the
yeah.
inside,
I
you're
think
like,
I was
oh,
just
this is just a,
intimidated on the
yeah.
outside. Yeah. That was like a big thing. where I guess I was intimidated on the outside. I was
Mhm.
trying to find the right words for it. Yeah, but basically intimidated on the outside. When you're on the inside, you're realizing like, oh, this has got to go. Like you're like jumping into these programs. The program I use the most is probably Maya. It's my most used tool out of every other program. But
Mhm.
um, yeah, I think that was one thing that surprised me. Um, what else? Yeah, what about you? If you say something, maybe it'll make me think.
My biggest surprise in the industry was how down to earth everybody was.
Yeah,
Like you said that there are actually people behind the games. Like to me, these games are just like monoliths, right? Like Halo. Like Halo is Bungie. Bungie is Halo. And then you meet the team, and you're like, oh, Bungie is 28 people. Well now they're like 500 plus, right? But like Bungie is like 28 people, and they did it on, the equivalent of like an iPhone 6 worth of technology. And I'm like, what?
yeah,
How did you guys do that? But yeah, my
insane.
biggest surprise was the amount of what's it called? Not passion, but the amount of motivation and drive to pursue the next big thing, the next break, the next innovation is because like you feel like you don't see it from the outside, right? Because working at Ubisoft, it's like kind of like the world renowned
Yeah,
clown or whatever clown studio, blah 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 X and Y's. Consumers like to clown on them, but when I worked on Watch Dogs Legion, I was like, wow, this technology is immaculate. This we had this like audio rendering procedural generation thing where we turn like 7 voice actors into like 120 by
yeah,
adjusting pitches and other things in people's voice. This is explained to me, so I don't actually know it personally by hand, but the way it was explained to me by the engineers was like, yeah, so like we can recreate certain regional sounds. And I'm like, what? That's so cool. But you don't hear anybody talking about that on the outside. But
right,
when I'm in there, I'm like, wow, there's just so much tangible innovation. I feel like when I'm playing other video games, I feel like what we did years ago is behind now. So I'm excited to I don't know, work at Bungie and see what they're doing, because I'm sure that their Tiger engine is completely different and geared towards whatever they need to do for their game or for their products. And I'm excited to see what kind of innovation is there too. And I'm always just kind of daunted by how much of the human aspect goes into games. And that was something that I didn't know until I got in, and I realized that like, wow, every hour of work is a human, somebody behind it, slaving away or putting all of their passion and love into it, and all of that innovation comes from the heart and soul of every human that is put in the seat of the studio. So yeah, whether it be 28 people at Bungie originally, I don't know if that's how many people they had originally on Halo 1, versus like the 200 plus people we
very
had on Watch Dogs Legion. It's like every single person has an input. Every single person has what's it called? Has an imprint on the game. So yeah, the human aspect of the game and the human aspect of every ounce of innovation in these games are what caught me by surprise the most.
for sure. Yeah, I completely agree, and something we kind of hinted on uh before the show is like the fact that people like online will like chastise devs like, "Hey, where's my patch
Where's
4
my
point,
DLC? You know what I mean?
where's
Well,
my DLC?"
the marketplace is always working. Well, yeah, it's a different team, you know.
Yeah. But, yeah, there's so many talented people. I think when I started working, in different companies and stuff, I realized how passionate the devs are, and that's what made me realize that these games have human faces attached to them, because
Hmm.
before I'm like, "Oh, that's Master Chief, uh, hundreds of people are behind it." Yeah, I'm sure, but, I don't know. I didn't really think about it, I guess, until I start working in the industry, so I can't really expect, a casual gamer to, I really, wish they would be like, "Oh, they're just, like, maybe 20 artists who designed this section, of this level, and 50 over here, and the reason why this happens this way is because there's 20 different iterations, and this was the best one. Is there's just so many decisions that go into level design, to programming, to coming up with new technology to design like a simple thing that they could use in the future for another game besides their game is just incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and it's yeah, like I said, it's massive. Like it's more than anybody could ever know until you get into it. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, it's just I don't know. We can speak about it all day, but it's like it just like it's so games is so difficult. Like making games is so difficult, and it's like I can't explain it to somebody properly until you're there. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it's like just working in a team automatically induces like 800,000 new problems. You know what I mean? I'm sure you've been there for code check-ins and they're like, well,
Yep.
we're behind on schedule because we have 812,000, or we have 8,000 new
Bug
bugs. And we're
squash.
like, I'm like, what? How can we have that many?
Yeah.
So,
Or and it's like small things I can add. Like let's say, for example, I had this problem. I animated at the wrong frame rate.
mhm.
Um, and that affects everyone else. And you're like, oh shoot. So you have to go back and track down what the original problem was. Like I animated what I thought was the right frame rate, so I sent it to another person, and then the animator who's putting it in is like, huh, this looks weird, I don't know why, and then they're tracking down why, and then you're like, oh shoot, I was,
Yeah, that came from me,
like, you were me, oh shoot.
Yeah.
So stuff like that can happen, and but just imagine that, but like on like thousands of bugs that people have to track
Mhm.
down. It's not just my position, but a lot of other people who are programmers or I really respect those positions who have to like track down the bugs. That's not my job.
Yeah,
Uh,
I couldn't imagine doing that all day.
nope.
I respect them. I no man, I love them. They help us
Uh,
out so much. Like
yep.
like for me anyways on the level design aspect, they tell me what I can and can't cut. You know what I mean? They tell me what I can and can't do. They come in and they say, "Hey, this interaction's not working properly. This is why. This is where we found out. This is the documentation. This is the exact line of code that it happens. This is the exact interaction that it happens. And this is recreatable, 80% of the time." And I'm like, "Oh, snap.
Like dang.
Solutions?" And my team's like, "Oh, just cut it out." And I'm like, "Oh, wow. Okay, cool." But like that kind of feedback, that feedback loop is so important, and just QA and yeah, QA in general, it's just such an important role, a very crucial role, which I'm sure we could talk
That's
about
a
forever.
role that a lot of people need to, I guess, put some respect on.
Put a lot of respect on. I feel like they're the backbone of any gaming
Yeah.
studio.
Yeah, that's one thing I definitely learned. QA, how important QA is.
Yes,
It's
yes, I agree. And which is it's an infinitely long fight on the internet because people always come in
like, oh, you just do QA.
just QA, but they really do save us so much time and effort and energy. It's just it's baffling.
Yeah,
But
for
yeah.
sure.
Anyways, the last two closing questions I have for you here today, all right,
Yep.
are if you have one piece of advice. I'm sure you've said it earlier, and we've said it earlier. But if you have one piece of advice for viewers and listeners, what would it be? Whether it be entering the industry or whatever it may be, yeah, please share upon us your knowledge.
Yeah. I'll kind of share. Maybe I'll expand upon what I said earlier. But my advice to everybody who wants to get in the gaming industry is kind of a mixture of what me and you did, which is pretty much if you're interested in animation or level design, research it, and then actually try it. See what you can come up with, even if it's a really dumb short level. Actually creating it is like the first step into your dream, and it's like such a simple piece of advice. Simple piece of advice, but you'd be surprised at how many people are like, man, I really want to be an artist or animator. I'm like, well, have you tried, like, have you actually like just tried to animate, even if it's small, like if you're trying to animate like a stick figure thing, then you're already on the right track.
Hmm.
So even starting off small, just go ahead, research it, try it out, and then you're on your way to being the next Hideo Kojima.
Yeah, you're step one of 100. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For me, it's like Forge tools. Halo Infinite's Forge is immaculate. It's
Oh
amazing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. True.
PlayStation has Dreams. Work with that kind of stuff. See
Yeah,
what
that's actually a great.
because you already have the tools. Like if you're what's it called? I mean, like, yes, there's some gaps obviously when you're actually in the seat, but essentially the knowledge is there, right? You have the tools. Now you just need to use the tools to create something, and then putting it out there. Suddenly, you now have a ability to garner feedback. Oh, this level's too big. Oh, this level's this or that. Oh, this level's too ugly. I don't like the lighting here. And it's like even from quick glances, or even from quick downloads, or even from quick, even your friends playing it, or you playing it. It's like you've learned so much about your
Yeah.
own work, and it's just vastly important to be able to actually have that experience. Like, you need tangibles in order to get
Art
in.
is meant to be shared.
Yeah, of course. Share it, even if it's bad. Like, it doesn't matter. You made it. You know what I mean? You've done 90% more than everybody else sitting around talking about it on Twitter. You actually went out and did it.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, that's basically the best advice I can give, because um so many people want to do it, but they just don't know where to start. And my advice is just try it. Just open up the program. You open up the program, that's already a start.
Mhm.
And just go from there.
Okay. And the second question I have for you is, where can people learn more about you?
Yeah. Everyone can follow me on Twitter at i3bit. I podcast a lot. That's a lie. I used to podcast a lot. Now I'm on like one or two shows, and then occasionally I'll be on a show like this where I just
Hmm.
pop up and like hello. So yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at i3bit. I pretty much on there. I'm on Fun Speculations podcast FSP every Monday at 10:30 p.m.
Hmm.
and I will be streaming some more. This Me creating different scenes and game design, and like animating in Maya and then importing it and stuff like that. So yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me. What I'll be doing. It's great to be here. I always love talking games. I'm not always allowed to to go into huge game design talk. Usually, the podcast I'm on is dealing with the current topics in the gaming
Hmm.
industry. So it's always nice to talk to a fellow dev, and we just talk about what's actually going on. So appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Again, thank you so much for joining the show and being able to geek out, nerd out with me. I just love being able to talk about our hobbies, and which is actually part of our job as well too inside the industry. And then just, of course, listening to and meeting new people and listening to them share their interests in hobbies as well too. Like, I would have never known that you taught, or I would have never known that you did the Affleck commercials or worked on Rick and Morty, which I think is very impressive. Like, I think
Yeah,
that's
thank
it's
you.
it's awesome. So yeah, it was very entertaining, very fun talk, and it was very engaging as well too. So hopefully we'll be able to do this again in the future.
Yep,
You're always welcome back on whenever you have the time, whenever our schedules line up, and we can talk about our, whatever it is that we want to talk about, our favorite game
yeah, we do a
engines,
part.
our favorite movies, whatever. It doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, us as devs, that's not the only thing we are, right? And I want to highlight that on the show.
Yeah,
But it's always fun to be able to talk to a fellow dev and actually be able to shamelessly talk about the things that we love. And I think it's very important. And sometimes being on other people's podcasts doesn't allow us to um, do that fully, because there's a gap in knowledge there, or there's a gap in experience, or yeah, and that doesn't quite allow us to relate all the way. So it's
yeah.
always a blessing to be able to talk to a peer, and one is such renowned and immaculate as you are.
Thank you, thank you. It's been a great time.
Mhm. So, with that being said, thank you everybody. This has been Industry Insider. I really appreciate everybody for listening and checking this out. This again is my guest Amario A, also known as 3-Bit. I have all of his information linked in the description, and I hope that everybody has a wonderful time.
Great. Take care, everybody.